The fentanyl crisis in Canada, especially in Vancouver, is horrific and it's heart-wrenching. The incredibly addictive opioid is killing thousands. It's easy to think that once on the addictive downward spiral of substance abuse, the outcome of a user's life is inevitable. It looks like a ruined, no-hope continuum that ends in premature death, either from an overdose or the user wears out their body. At least that's the way it looks from the outside. But as Colin Ross, a previous guest, who took us inside his world as an addict and hydromorphone IV patient, pointed out, users can reverse the course of their lives. It's what Jim Ross did more than 30 years ago when he and a group of recovering substance abusers came together and created a safe haven where they could help one another. Jim says, unless you've been to those cold, dark, and lonely places, the words and support you share with an addict mean little. For an addict, knowing you have been where they are and you're living proof there is a way out of your addiction, well, those are powerful and motivating words. Turning Point is a place that provides just that, a point to turn around lives. The Society runs a 3 to 5 month program aimed at helping those who are running out of options. Central to the program is community and peer support, designed to help people regain independence, reach their full potential, and become contributing members of society. Having personally been a supporter of the program for a number of years, it's remarkable to have witnessed the effect this program has on so many people. To learn more about Turning Point, its origins, how it operates, and how it demonstrates there is hope in a sea of despair, we sat down with Brenda Plant for a conversation that matters about recovering from substance abuse.
Conversations That Matter is a partner program for the Centre for Dialogue at Simon Fraser University. The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you.
Brenda Plant, welcome to Conversations That Matter. This is a conversation that does matter because we have a very serious problem. I know that it's not specific only to Vancouver, but the opioid crisis and the lives that it's taking leave a lot of people thinking there is no hope, and no hope that you're going to survive a course of substance abuse, let alone having any hope for recovery. And that's what we want to talk about today, recovery. Is there still hope for recovery?
Absolutely.
How can you say that with such confidence?
I think that there needs to be, I've always thought that there needed to be a continuum of interventions for people that sort of have that epiphany that this isn't working and I need help. And so I think we're looking at broadening what that continuum looks like. So we have harm reduction interventions and we have abstinence-based programs like Turning Point. I think recovery is real. I think it's attainable. I think it's very achievable. And I think that it's going to take a collaborative approach. I think there needs to be a continuum of services available, but I don't ever want to see us get to a place of hopelessness.
Well, what are some of the elements or components of that continuum of care?
Well, I can speak a lot about what we do at Turning Point.
Well, let's get to that in a moment,
Okay,
but let's talk about a couple of the other things, because when people get through some of those earlier stages, then they need a place like Turning Point. So what are some of the first sort of steps that will help get somebody to a point where they become eligible for Turning Point? Because it's not just,
No, I mean, people can enter that's what we need, is a system where it's seamless, so people can enter that continuum at any point on that continuum. Mm-hmm. We operate an outreach program, we have a drop-in center, and so we see lots of people who they've come to the end of the road and they've just said, this is it, I can't keep going. We do see a lot of people who they're scared to death. Mm-hmm. They're so scared that the next drug that they buy is going to be laced with something. And so that's an entry point. We need to be able to have services and programs available so that when somebody says, I just can't do it anymore, mm-hmm. that we have, as you've heard in the media, treatment on demand. There needs to be a response to those people when they make that call or when they walk into a drop-in center.
But it needs to be a variety of options. I mean, we look at Crosstown Clinic, for instance. That would be one model.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what they're now, there's a lot of emphasis right now on providing free heroin. There's a lot of emphasis on maybe cannabis as an option to opiate replacement therapy. I think we need a broad range of interventions, and that we need to match people to the intervention that is going to work for them. Recovery can happen across a continuum. So somebody who may have to be on opioid replacement therapy for the rest of their lives, that's still recovery for that person.
Right. So we also take a look at the work that Evan Wood is doing.
Yep, work with Evan through the BC Centre of Substance Use, which I think was an extraordinarily needed program, service, research. I mean, it's doing a lot of things. So there's a research component, there's an education component, and the piece that I'm more involved with has to do with the treatment and recovery. And so there are stakeholders sitting at those tables. There are family members who've been impacted by familial death due to drugs. There are user groups that are involved. Evan and the people at the BC Centre are engaging everyone in the conversation and in the dialogue, and that's what's critical about their work, because one of my frustrations has been that there's good work being done, but it happens in these silos. And what Evan is doing in a remarkable way is bringing everyone together to have this conversation, because it is going to take a coordinated response.
Right. And so we've got Turning Point, but we've also got Street to Home, which you are also connected with. What does Street to Home offer? And then I want to talk about Turning Point because I am such a huge fan of the whole Turning Point program.
Well, I am thoroughly enjoying the work I'm doing with Street to Home, and I sit on a couple committees there, and I think what they've recognized is in order to address homelessness, which is really their original mandate, you have to address the root causes of homelessness. And what we know now is that addiction and mental health issues are some of those root causes. So we're looking, and Street to Home is looking at developing a couple of different, very innovative models of doing longer term housing developments that will provide options for people who need longer term transitional housing. Maybe doing recovery programs that are tailored after the San Patriano model in Italy, or Delancey Street in California, where I've been and toured, and it's a remarkable program. It's about getting people in and getting them to work and developing vocational skills so that they can reintegrate into the community. So we're also looking at developing a pre-care type of facility where, and Rob will certainly talk more about this, but where...
Because as you know, I want them to come in and talk about what they're doing as well.
I think everybody to talk about it.
And I think we need to have as much information out there as possible about the fact that there is, well, there's hope. And there are
that's
ways
what gives you hope,
yeah,
absolutely,
right.
is that you have the BC Centre and you have Street to Home and you have various groups looking at having a variety of solutions. And the conversation that matters, dare I say, is the one that engages all of these people together, not operating in these silos, because there really is no system of addiction recovery. And that's part of what I believe the Centre's mandate is trying to develop that system or that continuum and making it so that everybody is involved in designing that.
Right. Now, I don't want to exclude the fact that the Ministry of Health and Social Services and Vancouver Coastal Health and Fraser Health and all these other agencies are all involved
in these initiatives. Yeah.
But it's the sheer weight or mass of the challenge that we're facing collectively. You can't rely on any one of those agencies to have the resources that are needed to be able to meet all of these different streams of care.
Well, and I think that's what I've been saying is that we need a coordinated response, and that means that you do have everyone at the table, including people like, BC Housing needs to be at the table, and the Health Authority and various aspects of the Health Authority. We're front line and we're in the trenches. We're not in the downtown east side at the clinics. We're not doing insight work, but we're doing critically important work, and so the voice of the providers also needs to be at the table, and people with lived experience. We say recovery works. We believe abstinence works. And there are people, especially with Recovery Day and the Recovery Capital Conference coming up next week, a huge first for Canada. There is going to be 17,000 to 20,000 people in the streets of New Westminster showing recovery works.
Yeah.
It's evidence.
So you've just opened a new facility in Richmond. And that wouldn't have been able to...
Just about to.
Yeah, or okay. Maybe by the time that this officially goes to air, the doors will have
fair enough. Yeah, that's right.
The official opening. But that is the example of working together. Like, you couldn't have done this on your own, but because you're working in harmony with others, you're able to create an opportunity, and this becomes one of your recovery facilities.
It's an extension of one of our recovery facilities.
Yeah.
I'm so excited about Stories opening. It was when Turning Point recognized that we needed another level of care. So after people graduate from our program, they needed a less intensive level of care. So aftercare, transitional living, second stage. And we had an opportunity to respond to a proposal that the City of Richmond put out to develop some land. And I was sort of intimidated with the idea of building a 14-story building, and I thought, I don't want to lose this opportunity to competitors. Why don't we go reach out to people who we think might be interested in this and see if we could do a collective response to the expression of interest, which is what happened. And truly, it's being touted as a first in Canada. There are 5 nonprofit housing providers in this building, and that's just, it's never been done.
So how many rooms or apartments or...
129 units.
For Turning Point alone?
No, there are 129 units
total.
in the building.
Okay.
Because I was a little bit intimidated at the grandiosity of this project, Turning Point has 10 units. The exciting piece for us is that in the building we also have created a social enterprise cafe. So my tenants in the building, as part of our continuum of care, will get employment readiness training on site. So they get to live in the building, go downstairs, work at the cafe, get experience learning to become baristas and in the hospitality trade, and get out to work.
But having work experience, then that they can then take out to the workplace.
Critical component of the long-term recovery.
Let's talk about the Turning Point model. What is at the core of the Turning Point model that makes it unique, and why does it have, you know, kind of the teeth that it does? It works. I've seen it work. I've met people who have gone through the system and they are back living fully functioning lives.
I did a review of all our community or of our client satisfaction surveys. I don't know if I told you this a couple of years ago, because I was curious about what is the magic of Turning Point. People speak really highly of it. And it wasn't, it was partly the programming. But they said the thing that made Turning Point work for them was that they felt safe in our homes, and they felt like they were in a family. And I mean, I sort of got emotional when I read it, because I thought, what more could you want to impart? That people who are struggling with lifelong challenges with addiction get to feel safe for maybe the first time in many, many years. And they feel like they're in a home environment. And so they've got their peers right there to lean on. I think that we're all of us at Turning Point are so passionate about the work we do because of the legacy of the founder and what he imparted to me before he passed. And really, really at the heart of Turning Point, it would be, I'd be remiss not to say at the heart of Turning Point is Jim Ross.
Right.
And Jim's vision that anybody reaching out for help should have a place to go. And so we don't, you know, we don't have, or our continuum is, we take people right off the street, but we also serve doctors, lawyers, police officers. We don't have it's not about sort of one demographic. We serve people that want help, that come to us reaching out and asking for help. And that was what Jim wanted to do.
Well, and that's exactly how Turning Point started. I remember interviewing Jim, and he was telling me that he went through an AA program, and it's a week or two later that he gets a phone call from one of the other people who went through the program with him saying, man, you got to give me a place to sleep, because if I spend another night on the street, I'm going to go back to using. And thus starts Turning Point.
Well, really, I mean, that was it. I mean, 12-step recovery is an ongoing, lifelong journey. And Jim met us people at the meeting, and this woman was having a hard time staying sober, and he said, well, look, just come sleep on the floor of my one-bedroom apartment, and hauled the mattress out on the floor, and like he says in his interview, you know, with you, he said, before I knew it, I had 18 people sleeping on the floor.
18, I know.
I love it. I mean, I love
we got to do something.
I know, and he's like, they were in my bathroom, they were in the closet. I mean, and finally, the owner of the building said, Jim, I really respect what you're doing here, but I think you need a bigger place. And so he and our co-founder Lance Riley rented a house on 14th and Alder in Vancouver, and within a week had 26 people. And after about a year, some business people on the west side of Vancouver that were involved in 12-step helped them to purchase the houses on 13th Avenue, where we are 35 years later.
So somebody enters Turning Point. They may have been clean for a week or two, but that is by no means any kind of preparation for being able to transition out of the life that they've had. And Turning Point provides that place for them to get healthy again. Tell me what is expected of them, and what are the kinds of programs that they go through while they're there, or what is brought to them through the living situation when they're in the house?
Well, I think one of the things that's changed since Jim's days is that the clients we're serving have much more complex issues. And so we've had to design our program to meet the needs of the clients where they're at. And so we have a stabilization phase, for example, when they first come in, that's 30 days. And that's really where they're assigned a buddy in the house that walks them through sort of what the rules are and how the house works. A big component of Turning Point is community living. It's like a therapeutic community in the sense that they help with the chores, they help with the cooking, they have to take care of their own laundry. And then, our clients are in group or in individual counseling all day, every day. And so it's a much more intensified model. We work with people who are fractured, who have lost their souls to their addiction, and really they are dependent upon us to help them with everything from learning how to eat properly, to exercise, to how to get a good night's sleep. And so that first stabilization phase is really teaching basic life skills from the most rudimentary level. And from stabilization, they move into really the critical piece of our program, which is about integration. So that's when they're spending a lot of time in community developing a support network. A big focus of our program has always been, from the beginning, where they're going to go after and what that transition looks like. And so they spend a lot of time, the whole time they're with us, focusing on what aftercare looks like.
But what happens in that integration phase? What are some of the components of that?
Well, we have a very complex or comprehensive life skills program. So everything from financial literacy, I'm a firm believer in partnerships, as Stories demonstrates. And so we work with community partners, and we have them coming in and doing a lot of these life skills. So financial literacy, getting bank accounts, some of them need to get ID, employment readiness, we do vocational assessments on people to determine how ready they are to go back to the workforce, what their skill level is. We might link people to get their GED or further their education. We might we do family work so that we're helping people reintegrate into family. The things that you and I might take for granted that are part of our daily living. Right. These are all things that we're teaching.
Well, I remember clients. A couple of years ago, I had a conversation with Adam Fair from Prosper Canada.
Oh, yeah.
And financial literacy, he said, it's amazing how many people do not understand. Like, once you drop below the poverty line, you don't understand how important it is just to file your income tax return, because they have no idea that it matters. And because by being in the tax rolls, even if you're not paying tax, you now become eligible for other programs, and it puts you in a place where you can start to receive support, and then having a bank account and ID, things that most of us would go, so what? But that is fundamental, isn't it?
And helping our residents develop budgets. They don't even understand the concept of budgeting, and most of our residents are on income assistance, and so they get a comfort check of $95 a month, and we sit down and we talk to them about how to spend that $95 so that it lasts for the month. These are quite literally the turning points for somebody in their life, in terms of to watch the self-esteem that develops in people who are mastering life's tasks. And it might be as simple as making their bed every day for 7 days in a row.
Yeah. So one of the other components that really stuck with me when I interviewed Jim was he said, you know, one of the key components to Turning Point is the person who you're working with, who's helping you through this, they've taken this journey themselves. How important is that?
I think the peer mentoring model and working with people with lived experience is critical. I think it's a critical component of what we do. We welcome people to volunteer at Turning Point who have lived experience, who are in recovery, because the person that is just scraping themselves off and crawling into the doors of Turning Point, to have somebody say, oh yeah, no, I was there, I was where you were. I'm 15 years clean and sober now, I'm 5 years clean and sober now. Their eyes, they don't even think that's possible.
Right.
And when they meet some of these people, we have people in senior leadership management roles at Turning Point who were clients at Turning Point 10 years ago.
There's a tremendous amount of credibility in being able to say, I've been in that dark and lonely place and I know the way out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And as you've seen over the years with your involvement at Turning Point, we've served thousands and thousands of people that are having productive lives out there today.
Well, to the point that when you meet them, you go, are you sure you were actually at Turning Point? Like, come on.
Yeah, no, I mean, we take photos of people when they come in, and it's always fun to ask them when they're leaving, do you want your intake picture? And they're like, oh, no, I don't, I'm not going back there.
Right.
And what a rewarding career when you get to hear those stories of hope, because it's like I said, recovery is possible, and I get to see it every single day. And
but I think it's almost impossible to do if you're left to your own devices. I don't know how you could do it. I can't imagine what it would be like to be.
Well, you're okay, because research would tell you that getting through addiction requires a community of people involved in your recovery.
Right.
And that you will do much better in support programs. And Turning Point believes that 12-step programs work. We believe that there are a host of programs that will work. It is about engagement. It is about connectedness.
Well, Turning Point is a fabulous tribute to Jim Ross, and it's a testament to the incredible work that you've done in taking that treasured piece of the puzzle and grow it so that it can be a benefit to more people. Thank you for coming in and doing this.
Thanks, Stu. Nice to be here.